Hello. Happy New Year's Eve, everybody. Welcome to Power Wash Simulator. Now, this isn't a video I would normally upload. It's going up on a Tuesday, I think, right? It's not a normal upload day. What are we doing here? Well, I wanted to do a nice little end-of-year wrap-up video because, I don't know, I haven't done anything like that before. This is like a good way to sort of reflect on some of the games we've played this year. I wanted to talk a bit about this channel. I don't know. I just wanted like a nice little end-of-year wrap-up. So, here we are, in probably the chillest game that I played this year. According to like all the different wrap-ups that like Steam and PlayStation put out, I think this is the one that I played the most. I think it was like 70 plus hours on this, so like this is my game of the year, apparently. So let's get into this game, because we got a Christmas ice rink to clean up. What's cool about this game is that it does like little holiday editions. It did like a Halloween one. This is technically their second Christmas one. But I played through the first Christmas one that they did last year, and I think it took me about 2 to 3 hours to finish cleaning. And that was too long for a video. So this one is hopefully much shorter. It's much smaller. The other one was like Santa's Workshop. Ooh, little constellation. And getting through that one took very long. But it did feel more Christmassy, but it's not worth it. So the gist of the game is, you got yourself a dirty space, and you got yourself a power washer. And you power wash. It's so simple, pretty chill. Come on, let's get this penguin. Oh, somebody's graffitied little eyebrows on him. So we can switch our nozzle to something a little bit stronger, a little bit more focused, and there we go. Oh my god, they've graffitied all of them. I just want to check them all out. I mean, I know we're here to remove the graffiti, but I could still enjoy it if I want to. So anyway, we're going to do this for about the next hour, while essentially podcasting, I guess. Talking about, well, I've made myself a little agenda here that we can follow. Right now we're in the why this game and why this video section right now. So hopefully I can stick to that while also playing this game at the same time. This might be my greatest challenge yet. Anyway, so I wanted to do this video as sort of like an end-of-year wrap-up. Yeah, that's pretty much it, basically. I'll also point out at the top left where it says like 0% cleaned. That's like the entire level. We have cleaned 0% of the level so far, which makes sense. But also you can see like the thing that you're pointing at. Oh wow, okay, I turned on a new thing in the options menu called like details of like what's dirty on them. You can see like mold and ice chunks and stuff. I didn't realize that was an option. Cool. I might turn that off actually, that's kind of obnoxious. One sec. Okay, it's off now. But there's that little bar underneath the name of the thing, the Skating Aid Penguin, shows you how clean it is so far. So we know this one has a little bit of dirt left on him. Perfect. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to make this video as sort of like a mini podcast to talk about, just sort of reflect on the games we played and talk about the channel in general. So we'll start there with that, with this whole channel. Oh, I just did something unconsciously. There's a button that you can press, and it basically shows you all of the dirty areas highlighted in orange. So if you just scrub that a little bit. Oh god, I wash here. Or I was here. It could be wash here. Wash ear, whatever. Alright. So, kind of a big reason why I started doing this channel was I've kind of always just wanted to do something like this. I enjoy video games a whole lot, and I like sharing them with other people, and this kind of seemed like a natural fit for that. So I mostly enjoy playing games on here that... I'm not really looking to play things that are like big or popular or anything like that. I'm mostly just playing the games that I want to play and think other people would enjoy as well. So Even though I enjoy a game like this, Power Wash Simulator, I don't know if I would do a whole series of this on the channel. So that's kind of why we're sort of squeezing it in here as like a little mini one-off episode. Hopefully mini. I don't know how long this is going to take. My estimate is about an hour, so fingers crossed for that. We'll see how much treble talking adds to this situation. Ooh, is there more graffiti along here that we can enjoy? Oh, that's a cool cat. Hell yeah. I love it. But another reason for this channel is that it's been kind of good for forcing me to play through more games. Because I'm mostly playing single-player, story-driven stuff on this channel. And increasingly I find myself playing more and more games that aren't that. There's way more games that are sort of fall into the live service category. And those are games that you can kind of just play forever because they're designed that way. And I kind of realized that I was playing a lot of those types of games and not getting as much of like the story-based stuff, like the one-off games that you'll play the duration of and then just stop when you're done. So because of that, I figured if I start doing a Let's Play channel, which is kind of forcing me to play through those story-driven games, or not forcing, I'm not forcing my way through them, but like, I do want to maintain my upload schedule. So it is, in a way, forcing me to get them all completed. And the channel has been great at helping me play through a lot of games that either I probably wouldn't have made the time to play through, or had given up on in the past, like Control. I had played Control in the past, but I didn't get very far and never went back to it. And then I decided to play it on here. And that kind of pushed me to finally finish it. And it turned out to be one of my most favorite games of all time. And then that pushed me towards Alan Wake, which was further another amazing game that we played. But this is not for that. We're not talking about that yet. We have several games to get through first. Oh boy, yeah. I started why I'm doing it. Oh, it says thanks to the viewers and subscribers. And yes, thank you all so much if you are subscribed or watched any of the playthroughs. I didn't really... As much as I did this sort of like share games with other people, making this like a huge channel or doing it to get tons of viewers was never like a main goal for me. It's kind of just... I don't know, every new subscriber to me is like, hell yeah, fantastic, thank you for coming along for the ride. It's not that I don't want you here, or I don't want a huge amount of people watching this, but like, not having a huge audience isn't a huge deal to me. I'm probably going to keep doing this even if my subscriber count never grows again. But it does feel nice when it does. I don't know what happened, but for some reason Crypt Custodian boosted the hell out of my subscriber count, so if you started watching during that, thank you so much. And don't worry, there's going to be more chill games like that coming soon. So let's start talking about what we played this year. And I technically wasn't playing anything at the beginning of the year because I took like a year or so off from the channel. So I think I started back up in May with Jusant, which is, if you... I mean, I'm probably going to be talking spoilers here, so if you haven't seen that, or if you haven't seen that playthrough, I mean, I'm going to recommend all my playthroughs because I think they're all amazing. Not really, I'm not that. Some of them are good. But yeah, I'll probably put chapter marks in this video as well, so if I start talking about a game that you haven't seen the playthrough of, or don't want to, you can just skip over that, or skip to the ones that you have seen. I'll try to keep the discussions to games located to their categories, or their sections. So, Jusant. I mean, this is going to be a common thing I say about all the games that I've played on the channel, is I really loved this game. I thought it was super cool. The climbing mechanics were really unique. Like, you never really see movement as a game mechanic much anymore. Like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the original Assassin's Creeds, like from 1 till maybe Revelations is about where they stopped, where climbing all the structures in that was actually kind of like a puzzle part of the game, where you had to figure out how you were climbing stuff. And it really feels like that game and a lot of other games sort of abandoned making their movement or climbing in games interesting. They just sort of automated it to holding a button, pointing at the wall you want to climb, and just going. Assassin's Creed 2, I think, also introduced, like, actual equipment that you needed to make certain climbs. And yeah, I don't know, I just don't love that they abandoned that stuff. I mean, it's not like the core part of the game, so I understand why they got rid of it. But it did sort of leave a gap in the market for games that wanted to make climbing and navigation more interesting. And Jusant is a game entirely made of that. Like, that game is just about climbing. So, I guess in some sense they took it a lot further than Assassin's Creed because they're introducing so many more tools that you can use to get to achieve your goals, I guess, so to speak. And it is really easy to get the hang of as well. I mean, it takes a bit of time to learn it, but once you got it, like, it's easy to... I guess the term is like a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling, where it's easy to learn the mechanics and how to use them. But in order to like master them and like really know how to use them, it takes like a long time. Like, I thought I was pretty thorough in exploring in that game, but there's apparently a lot of stuff that I missed. And unfortunately, I haven't gone back to look for most of that stuff. I mean, it wasn't a very long game, so it probably wouldn't be too hard to go back and look, but... dang, that game... because of its focus on, like, exploration as a game mechanic, they really went for it with, like, hiding stuff and making the environments interesting to explore. I just think it's kind of sad that there aren't as many games these days that use movement as their core mechanic. And I guess I mean that in, like, an interesting and engaging way, because there are games that kind of make movement a mechanic, but it's not like the main goal of the game. Like, the main goal in Jusant is to climb. But there's games like... I mean, the classic example is QWOP, where movement is technically the main part of the game, but it feels less about the movement and more like trying to manage this unwieldy character. And I think the developer of QWOP made like a few other games as well. But yeah, games like that make movement a challenge to the actual game mechanics. Oh, what's the game called? Party Animals, Fall Guys... stuff like that, where you kind of got like floppy characters that are hard to control and navigate through the environment. I think that's sort of like a different genre of movement-based gameplay. I also think that, like, that back to Jusant, it really used its game time well. No area really, like, overstayed its welcome. Each area sort of had its own unique mechanic, like the vines that would grow. The second last level had, like, the wind that you had to contend with or use to, like, get further jumps. And, like, each area felt, like, just long enough to fully explore each mechanic and not overstay its welcome. But I guess certain mechanics would return to mix with other new mechanics to make them interesting, like... I mean, boy, I haven't played that game since May, so I can't think of many examples. Maybe I should, for next year, if I do this again, I should take more notes while I play. Just in case I need to ramble about it while cleaning something. But yeah, overall, Jusant was like a pretty fun game to start with. I mean, not as story-heavy as a lot of the other things on this list. I do kind of want to play more story-focused stuff on this channel, just because I think that's more interesting. And also preferably something voice-acted so I don't have to read every single character. But hey. There's also another game that I think is coming out next year that's kind of similar to Jusant, called Cairn. It also looks like it's another sort of like rock climbing game. I believe they put a demo out for it, but I haven't checked that out yet, so maybe I will and see if that's something that we might play on the channel in the new year. I don't know. We'll see. Compared to like this, I guess, second round doing this channel, I feel a lot more prepared for the future now. Because before, I was kind of just jumping from game to game. Ooh, this whole ledge. And kind of hoping that by the time I finished one game, I'd figure out what I'm going to play next. But I've been paying more attention to gaming trailers and what's available on Steam and PlayStation and all that, and I've got a long list of stuff to play. Like, I could add nothing to this list, and I would probably have all of next year covered with new games that I want to try. Though, I don't think they'll still be new by the time I get around to them. But if new stuff comes out next year, I'm not going to hesitate to bump stuff around on the list. Like, if Control 2 suddenly comes out, it's going to be the next game that I play on the channel. I will... Ooh! Here's a fun thing about this game. I believe every single level, or at least most of the levels... Yeah, come on. Let me up. They got a little gnome! They hide a gnome in every level. I mean, he's not particularly well hidden, but... Got a holly jolly gnome! Ooh, you're the constellation. I thought it might be a rocket ship or a Christmas tree. But that is definitely a gnome. Where should we put you? Here, you can oversee us from the bench. Can I rotate you? No. Oopsies. Sorry, buddy. Oh, no. You just have a little sleep. Just a little sleep. Come on. Okay, yeah, you can kind of watch us work. Oh yeah, we also have like ladders and a step ladder that we can place throughout the environment. Instead of just desperately trying to hop on top of everything. But you know, you work with what you got. Anyway, after Jusant, what did I play after Jusant? Oh, I went back to Horizon and finished up the Burning Shores DLC. I mean, that was pretty short. And I don't know how much more I have to add to it, simply because it's just kind of more of the main game. But kind of like the DLC for the first game, it really feels like it took what really worked about the main game and just polished it and made it even better for the DLC. So, yeah, I don't know, amazing DLC. It created its own little standalone story with more of the, oh, what were they called? The Zeniths. Man, they really do like their evil, rich characters. But I mean, it's a reflection of reality. So, I don't know. Not a bad prediction. I feel like this sort of happened with Glass Onion, the Knives Out movie that came out, where everyone sort of assumed, like, oh, they're specifically talking about this person. And it's like, no, we kind of weren't, but also, you're not wrong to see the similarities there. It wasn't about them specifically, but it was sort of about the whole ideology and the way they view the world, so you're not wrong to see the comparisons. But let's try not to talk about that too much, because this is supposed to be a fun Christmas episode and I don't want to get all depressing. But yeah, very excited for any future Horizon stuff. I mean, we're currently playing the LEGO Horizon Adventures game on the channel, so check that out if you haven't. But that's got its own section at the bottom of the list, so we'll get to it. But yeah, overall, Burning Shores, amazing. It gave us a nice setup for the next game that's coming out. Sounds like we're going to be heading to the East Coast instead, and just investigating weapons manufacturers to try and find weapons that we can use to fight off Nemesis. And I do like the parallels that they've created. between, like, the... I never know what to call it. Is it, like, the modern day plot? Because technically Aloy is the modern in the context of the game. But also kind of not, because it's the future. So is she the future plot? But also where Elizabeth's story takes place. It's also technically the future for us. Like, I forget how far in the future, like 50 years from us? I don't remember. But anyway, I like how the Aloy plot is kind of matching with the Elizabeth plot now, where there's this impending disaster that's going to end the world, and we gotta figure out what to do about it. And I guess the question is gonna be, is Aloy going to find a way to actually win? Because, ooh, reindeer. Because I guess technically Elizabeth won, but not in a way where the human species got to continue directly. Like, Earth had to put a little pause on the humans for a little bit before we could get back out there. Yeah, is that all the reindeer? Hell yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes this time. Oh, a fancy S. Classic. That's how you know teenagers are here. Whoops. Wrong one. Should I clean all these reindeer first? So yes, excited for Horizon 3 when it eventually comes out. I can guarantee that it will be played through on this channel, because I love the series so much. I still remember watching the first trailer for the first game when it was announced and being like, dang, this game looks cool as hell. And it's kind of amazing that nobody's really come to try and match it. Except for that Chinese knockoff game that was announced or came out like a month or so ago. That basically just was Horizon, but a mobile game. It was weird. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, after that, we moved over to Zao, or Legends of Kinzera Zao. Which, man, I really loved that game. Again, I'm going to say that all the time. I mean, as a game, I guess it was maybe on a little bit on the simpler side. Like, I've played a few Metroidvanias, so I think the gameplay itself didn't stand out a huge amount. I liked the switching between stances. That felt pretty unique, which was really fun. But I feel like the main strength of that game was in its storytelling. I remember... I think I was like making like thumbnails for the video and stuff and looking for images to use. And just Googling like the names of bosses and discovering, hey, these bosses are like actually taken from African folklore tales. Which was something that I didn't know because that stuff's not taught or explored very often in Western culture. So it was really cool to learn about that stuff. And to just have a whole game focused on it is just so cool. I'm hoping that based off of the title, it was like Legends of Kinzera, Zao. Kind of implies that maybe Legends of Kinzera could be a series, and there might be more coming out. Which I'm hopeful for, because I'd love to play more of a game like that, or just be in that world, or play in that sort of story environment. But even though it is taking specifically from, like, African folklore, it's not really a story... Well, the story isn't, like, focused on that. It just uses that as the framework for it, but it's ultimately a story about grief. Like, the game starts with you losing your father and having to contend with that. And how he's written the whole... Essentially, the whole game is the story that he's written for Zao to sort of help deal with the grief of losing his father. So each of the stories that we go through is a person going through grief in a different way. The first one is the daughter dealing with the loss of her mother. The second one was Zao dealing with the loss of his friend. And then the final one was the father who felt like he had failed his son. And they had both felt like they had lost each other. So each of these stories is sort of like exploring grief in a different way, which I just absolutely loved as a reflection of Zhao's story. And also the ending. I loved the ending for that game. Like, essentially, the father has written the whole story for his son to sort of help him cope or learn to live with his grief. But then instead of giving him a final conclusion to that story, he just leaves it blank for him, saying, I hope you have learned what I have told you. Let's see if you can see it for yourself, and let him finish the story for himself. Which, so good. That's really been a trend that's been happening with gaming lately. Like, for the longest time, it's felt like games have been mostly about gameplay, and not so much about story. But it feels like there are so many games coming out now with just interesting, cool stories. Like, it's just amazing to see so much more of that. Like, it feels like within my lifetime, games have gone from mostly like arcade toys. I mean, it was like that even longer before I started playing games, but seeing what games are doing now, telling complex, interesting stories comparable to, like, really other mediums, is really fantastic to see. Though I guess sort of the next step, and this is a whole rant I could go on, so I'll save it for later. But I feel like games haven't fully discovered how to tell stories as games yet. Like, all the storytelling that does tend to happen in games is usually a different medium, or a different medium's way of telling a story, specifically like writing or film for cutscenes and all that. It's very rare that you have a game where it feels like the actual gameplay itself is the thing telling the story. But, I mean, I don't even know if that is something you can do with games or with gameplay. And by that I mean like a fully fleshed out story. Because you could certainly help tell stories through gameplay, through like environmental cues and stuff like that, but I feel like you don't have a full game of that. So I don't know, I think that's an interesting thing that more games can explore. And I think Zhao does do that to some extent. Like, the boss fights... I was gonna say the boss fights kind of reflect the story, but I don't know entirely. Maybe just the Heart of Fear one? That one felt like a very narratively driven fight. And not narratively driven as in, like, oh, it has a lot of cutscenes. I mean narratively driven as in... I guess the metaphors of it? The metaphors of diving in, facing your fears head on. I don't know. Just, yeah. Games are getting better at telling stories. I wish we were figuring out ways to make gameplay itself better at telling stories. It's an interesting challenge, and I've certainly seen a few games that have done really well at that. But I won't dwell on this point. Let's move on to the next game, which was Duck Detective, which is kind of a wild tone shift after Zhao. Like, here we have this serious story about grief, and then we're gonna play the funny duck game where he solves crime, and it's salami-based. Once again, I really enjoyed that game. Very funny. Mostly simple. I mean, the puzzles did get me stumped. I think I did edit some stuff out of those videos where I kind of just wandered around and wasn't figuring out anything. It was kind of interesting editing it, because I had to... When I was, like, figuring out what I could cut, I had to watch those bits and be like, okay, did I make any realizations that I'm going to make later in the video because I watched this? And then just try to cut out the useless stuff. But overall, pretty fun game. I mean, the puzzles the mystery for it wasn't super hard. So, I mean, I've definitely played harder mystery games. Return of the Obra Dinn comes to mind as a really good mystery game. And while Obra Dinn has voice acting as well, I much prefer the voice acting in Duck Detective, which was hilarious. I mean, I just don't think those characters would have worked without the voice acting. I mean, the dialogue still would have been fun here and there in places, but just the over-the-top performances made that game just special. And I can't wait for the sequel that's coming out. They announced a sequel for it. It involves ghosts and camping. So we'll absolutely play that on the channel as well when that comes out. I forget if it was announced whether or not it had a release date yet, or if it just said 2025. I feel like most games are saying that for their release dates, because I believe Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out next year, and I don't think anybody wants to try and compete with that one. Like, until Grand Theft Auto gives us its release date, nobody's going to try to release randomly in 2025. It is not safe. I mean, maybe Horizon will. Horizon has a great reputation of coming out a week before a game that revolutionizes the industry. It was Breath of the Wild the first time, and Elden Ring the second time. Which means we'll probably get Elder Scrolls 6 whenever the third Horizon comes out. Can't wait. I have any other notes about Duck Detective? I just wrote good detective games there, and I already mentioned Return of the Obra Dinn, which, if you are looking for a very challenging puzzle experience, or a mystery experience, I highly recommend that one. Simply because oh man, you gotta pay attention to so much stuff to get through that game. And actually, I think both Duck Detective and Obra Dinn do a really cool thing. And it's kind of a challenge with these sort of mystery games where you're trying to figure out what you're trying to do, or trying to, like, solve the mystery, is you have to have a way to check to make sure that the player has solved the mystery. And in doing so, you can risk creating a game system that will either unintentionally tell the player, or at least direct the player to what they should be paying attention to. Or, yeah, basically you're kind of at risk of giving the player information that they should be solving for themselves. Like if you asked them why a specific item was important, or at least implied that a specific item was important, you may suddenly be tipping them off to, oh, I should have been paying attention to this item, when they might not have been at first. Kind of sort of indirectly spoiling the mystery for you. But I think Duck Detective finds like kind of a good way around that with their fill-in-the-blank way of submitting answers. And it also works well for creating a difficulty curve, because at the beginning of the game, there's less blanks to fill out and you get a little bit more information of what you're looking for. But some of those fill-in-the-blanks by the end of the game was like 12 blank spaces in a row where you have no idea what the verbs or nouns are. Which I think was really cool. Or just like a very good way of getting around telling the player what they should focus on. I also kind of need to comment on, like, the sort of strange ending for that game. Like, the majority of the game is just exploring, trying to piece the clues together and solve the mystery. But then it kind of ended with this weird moral choice system, where you're like, who is guilty here? And I kind of just approached it not from like the moral choice stance, because I would have made different decisions if I was doing that. I mean, I mean, they tell you that, like, Manfred is, like, struggling with his family and 2 kids. And then you come along and just like, no, yeah, I think I'm going to send you to jail now because of the crimes that you did to try and support your family. And, like, that's not a nice thing to do. So it's kind of weird. I don't know. It just felt kind of weird to sort of force that on the player. So I guess when I was playing, I kind of just didn't engage with it in that respect. And kind of just looked at it with, like, a cold look of reality or the law. Not reality, but, like, what would the law say about this situation? And I would disagree with those decisions somewhat. So yeah, I don't know. For such a lighthearted game that's really funny and comedic, it's really weird that it ends with you, like, tearing a family apart and ruining lives by arresting people and sending them to jail for breaking import laws. I mean, I guess you don't directly see the consequences of your action, but who knows, maybe Manfred will show up in the sequel and be real mad at you. Though it would be wild if you only send Sophie to jail and let Manfred go free. That would be a weird choice. Okay, I think we did most of the exterior of this place, did a full lap. So we got the rink itself, and then all the Christmas stuff in the middle. And we're at 61%, we're making pretty good time here. Let's try out this cool trick that I learned. So we got all these different nozzles that do different sort of like spray patterns. We got this one, which is like just a straight beam, which is good at like focusing in on stuff, but doesn't get a whole lot of surface area. But then, once you beat the game, you get this trident, which fires 3 beams at once, which does a lot better with the coverage. I mean, not amazing, like, compared to the widest one. It's weaker overall, but it does cover more area. But a trick that I learned with flat surfaces is if you get really low and switch to your trident, you can kind of do this sweeping thing where it kind of actually takes care of a lot more than you think it would. Like, this is now mostly clean. Or I kind of cleaned a whole lot of it when I was wandering around, I guess. Anyway, let's keep going with this. Okay, we played Alan Wake next. But I kind of don't want to talk about Alan Wake. Or at least the first one, without also talking about Alan Wake 2 at the same time. So I think we'll just pass on that one for now. And talk about American Nightmare. Probably my least favorite one that I played this year. And I mean, I mostly played it for completionist's sake. I did some research before hopping into Alan Wake 2 to see, like, how necessary is it to have played the previous games. And the ultimate answer that I got was it's not necessary, but you'll have a better sense of, like, what's going on if you have played the first Alan Wake. So I kind of just said, oh, fine, might as well. There's a remaster out, let's play that. And then while also researching the first one, I discovered American Nightmare, which I had no idea existed. So that just kind of got thrown on the pile by default. And yeah, I don't think I enjoyed it that much. For a game that's sort of more about horror, it feels like American Nightmare threw away most of that and focused heavily on the combat. So, like, while the first one is more narrative-focused and less combat-focused, this one kind of swapped that and went pretty weak on the narrative, I think. But went a lot harder on the combat with, like, more enemy types, more guns. And I think it had, like, a whole arena and arcade mode that you could play through, but those were not going to be on the channel, so didn't play them. Not even off screen. Frankly, not interested. That might have been the fastest uninstall I had. But the game, I don't want to be too mean on it, because there are some things in that game that were introduced to the series that Alan Wake 2 then took and did much better. Like the idea of the time loop that you're stuck in American Nightmare. That gets revisited. The spiral is harped on a lot more in Alan Wake 2. American Nightmare makes mention of the Herald of Darkness, and what's the other one? Herald of Darkness and something of Light. Oh my god, I forget the lyrics. Oh man. I mean, we'll be talking about the music of Alan Wake 2 in a sec, but yeah, that might be all the good stuff to talk about with American Nightmare. So let's move on to Alan Wake 2. I love this game. I mean, despite the fact that I played 70 plus hours of this thing, Alan Wake 2 is probably my favorite thing that I played all year. Just a strong story, much better gameplay. And, oh, man, I have so many things I could gush about for the game, but I think at that point I had started, like, doing my during credits monologues, so I think I covered a lot of the stuff there. But, oop, is that the rink done? Hell yeah. Cool. Let's do this wood thing next. So yeah, what did I write down in my notes for Alan Wake 2? Setup, good idea. Second one, slam dunked it. Yeah. So the concept introduced in the first Alan Wake of like him discovering these manuscript pages that are sort of dictating his life is a cool idea, but they are kind of ultimately inconsequential to the story. I mean, they are literally the story, but the fact that they exist almost feels kind of inconsequential. I guess, kind of. Whereas in the second game, you're fighting for control over that story. Specifically the clicker, which you need in order to make... the characters need to make their version of the story come true. Which I think is a much better use and exploration of the idea. Though I will give props to the first Alan Wake, exploring the idea in a more interesting way in the DLC, where like the literal words could be turned into like stuff in the environment you could use. But that was pretty much limited just to the DLC, and like the last 5 minutes of the main game I think had it. So I'm glad that they played with that idea a lot more in the DLC. And I guess somewhat explored in Alan Wake 2, because you're now literally rewriting the scenes. Like, you go into the hotel and like the stage area has like 4 different variations of like the beginning of the night during rehearsals, and then the play starts, and then all hell breaks loose. So that feels much more like using the premise much more literally in the gameplay, specifically to move the gameplay forward. So honestly, as much as I really liked the first Alan Wake and still think about it, I really just think that Alan Wake 2 took everything about that game and made it better. I think the combat is more interesting, because the first game, it like tells you that 3 enemies have arrived to apprehend you with like a sound cue and a camera zoom in and everything. Where this game is much more like enemies could jump out at any moment, especially in Alan Wake's Dark Place world, where you are literally constantly surrounded by things that could be enemies. You just don't know which ones are. And you can't risk using your flashlight on all of them, so you kind of just have to live with them existing at all times. Otherwise, you won't have a flashlight for when they actually show up. So I feel like just a lot more thought went into like how the gameplay worked in the second one. Or at least the end result that they arrived at, I think, is much stronger at creating that survival horror feel. And it was also kind of different vibes between him and Saga's combat. Like, with him, you're always on edge because you never know when the shadows are going to jump out. But with her, you usually can hear them coming. I'm trying to remember, she has boss fights, Alan doesn't. He just has chase scenes with the dark presence. So yeah, she definitely gets the better combat options, which, fair enough, she's in the real world, and is an FBI agent. not some writer with a gun. Oh, yes, I wanted to talk about this. I think I forgot to write this in my original talking points about the game. But I love how the game is just a combination of all different sort of genres of art. Like, obviously the main one is writing in books. But then it's also writing in other forms, like as movies, as poetry, and also, like, exploring it at different levels. Like, you have the professional writing of Alan Wake, but then just sort of the hobbyist writing of, like, Rose. Is the snowman done? Nope. There we go. But also, like, the game itself feels just made up of so many different art forms. Like, there's the actual game itself as video games, but then there's, like, actual acting in there, because they, one, have the short film Uten in there, but also they have the actual actors performing the characters to some extent. Like, the Koskela brothers are in their commercials. You get the actors in the flashes when Saga's interviewing them in her mind place. There's the ending cutscene with everybody. I don't know, like, yeah, just the use of, like, actual live actors. Like, I guess this technically makes Alan Wake 2 an FMV. Those old things. Doesn't quite have the same charm, but I do think it's better than them. Take that, the FMV genre. But yeah, hopefully we'll see more of that, like, in Control, because Control did bits of that as well. It had Dr. Darling's videos. Well, I guess the DLC technically gave us a few more with the Marmots and their videos throughout the place. I saw somebody describing the DLC online as, like, playing Control, but with Alan Wake's mechanics, which I think is a really good description of it, because it is sort of diving into that weird world of the FBC, but keeping it more survival horror rather than sort of action thriller, I would maybe categorize Control. But yeah, the real highlight of the game, though, when it comes to, like, other mediums used, is absolutely the music. I have been listening to the music, like, non-stop since I played that game. Even when I was playing it, I would, like, pretty much was listening to the music every single day. And I kind of wish I had realized a bit sooner just how good the music was, because each chapter ended with a different song, and I probably should have put more of the songs in, like, the outro screen, because I have my usual theme song there, but whenever a song was featured heavily in an episode, I tried to, like, find that song online somewhere and add it to the video at the end instead. But all the different chapters ended with one of those songs, and I didn't put them in there, and a lot of them are really good. So I'll recommend it again. Go check out the music for Alan Wake 2. It's all so good. Although, I guess we can't talk about the music without pointing out the whole musical that they did, which was absolutely incredible. And probably one of the best moments in gaming ever. Like, I don't know, like, I'm struggling to think of any other game that's done, like, a musical before. I remember hearing that Saints Row 3, they originally wanted to end that with, like, a Bollywood musical scene, which would have been amazing, but I mean, obviously, if you're optimizing your game for budget and not wanting to go over budget, cutting the musical seems like the reasonable thing to do. It's not that necessary, but it is amazing. And I think even Sam Lake had to fight to keep his music, or to keep the musical in there. And thank God he did, because it is incredible. You could absolutely cut it from the game and it would make no difference, but it is better for it. And also they did a live performance of it at the Game Awards, and that is also really cool to see as well. Oh boy. How much? We're almost done here. We're at like 93%. We still have a few more things to talk about. So I'll just kind of blast through some of these a little bit. First of all, the final draft for Alan Wake 2, which I originally thought was just like a New Game Plus thing, but it actually seems to be like a little bit of a continuation of the story. You are playing through the whole game again and getting largely the same story, but there's more like voiceovers and pages to find that contain knowledge that you wouldn't have unless you had already played through the game. Because now Alice is in the dark place trying to help us escape, I believe is the gist of it. So a lot of the entries are kind of focused on that. So, I mean, I'm not going to do a full playthrough on the channel because that would just be playing the game again. But maybe in the future I'll play through it on my own time and just try to like edit together all the new stuff, or at least the interesting stuff. But I also have a feeling if I leave that for too long, I'm not gonna be able to tell what's new, other than obvious things like if Alice shows up. And then I had a note in here about like reflecting on what the third game could be, or like what the ending of this whole thing could be. And I guess this is just bordering on fan fiction of what I would like to see. Or maybe not what I would like to see, but what I think could be really funny for the ending of the series of Alan Wake is him finally realizing he has full control over the story, and him just saying screw all this, and just disobeying all the rules that he imposed on himself, and just writing just a terrible ending to the story, where he just gets like superpowers out of nowhere and just obliterates the Dark Presence because he finally just gets out of his own way and just does it. It would be a horrible ending for the game, but like, if you did it right, you could justify it within the story. I mean, my pitch for the ending is literally write a bad ending, which, I don't know, maybe don't do that one. Okay. After Alan Wake, it was Crypt Custodian, which got a lot of subscribers, which was really surprising to me. It's kind of impossible for me to know what's going to do well on the channel. Like, are popular games going to do well? Sometimes, maybe not. But this game that kind of feels like it came out of nowhere, like it just randomly appeared on my Steam one day, and I was like, this looks cute, I'm going to play this on the channel, because why not? And then, like, a few days after it, like, the first episode came back, I didn't think much of it, but I went to, like, upload the second episode and noticed that the first episode had, like, 400 views or something on it out of nowhere, it felt like. So that was a good feeling. And if you're one of those people, thank you so much. It helped make my day a little bit better. And it's also maybe kind of motivated me to put a lot more cute, charming games on the list of things coming up in the future. Which was kind of the explanation for Horizon Adventures right now, but that was going to get played inevitably. And I think maybe at least the next two games on my playlist, or at least one of them. But anyway, Crypt Custodian. Boy, I feel like I just said a lot of nice stuff around the game, but I don't know. If I'm honest, Crypt Custodian is... I mean, I still loved the game. I think it's very... I had a lot of fun with it, but it definitely feels like something that needs a lot more polish to it. More specifically in, like, the story area. Like, the gameplay was fine and fun. Like, I loved that. And the game does... It feels like it bordered a little bit on the easier side, but maybe that's just because it was aiming for, like, a younger audience. But story-wise, I feel like it was a bit of a letdown. It could have done much more with the premise. Like, it's got this whole theme going on of, like, friendship and creating, like, new connections, because that's the main goal of the game, is to get 10 friends so you can break into the palace. And while it kind of does that throughout, I feel like the game needed more moments sort of exploring that idea. Because for the most part, whenever you meet the characters, some of them you either meet at the beginning of the area and you like do some task for them, like the stuff with Crouton, finding all the bugs. Rescue the raccoon, trying to find like the ultimate ride for him or her. But then for some of them, like Scully, you just sort of hear about her existence at the beginning of the level and then find her at the end, and you don't really get to know her at all. And I think that's kind of the main problem that I sort of had with the game, is that we don't really get to know any of these people that we're now like friends with. It's more like you're accomplices for a crime you're about to do, rather than like actually being friends. Hang on. I think most of this level is clean, and it looks like we only have the star left, but usually if you're down to like the last 3 things that need to be cleaned, it has a little pop-up on the screen that lists like what you have left to clean. Which means there's probably stuff around here that I haven't cleaned yet. Which is not great, because it looks very clean. Luckily, we have a little way of seeing what we have cleaned and not cleaned. This is like a list of everything in the level. Christmas tree star, not cleaned yet. We got some handrails and the entrance post. So we can mark the entrance post. Zip. Yep, and it'll blink white to show that you haven't cleaned this one specifically. Where are you, Dirty? Wow, that looks so clean, though. Oh my god. Okay, anyway. So yeah, I feel like the game needed more moments where we got to learn about the characters a little bit more. Arc Bobbletop. What's the Arc Bobbletop? Oh, it's probably this thing, isn't it? Yep. Because there's little moments throughout the game where you see like the other characters interacting with each other, like Mira's dinner party that she throws for some of the characters. She also has them over in her basement to like play a concert later, which I think was really cool. The game just sort of needed more of those moments where the characters were just sort of just hanging out with each other and being friends, just to sort of drive that narrative moment home a little bit more. And I'll also say that, like, the ending was cute and nice, but I don't know. I feel like it wasn't the right ending for that game. Because the entire game, it's about, like, making friends and building new friendships with all these people. And then for the sort of happy ending to be escaping from that to revisit your old family again, kind of feels like it goes against that. In the very least, it needed a moment at the end where, like, what's the cat's name? Pluto is, like, lying there with his family. He's comfortable, he's enjoying it with them. But then he, like, sort of looks off to the side and sees the crystal mirror. He can see all the new friends that he's made on the other side, and is like, you know what? I like spending time with them more. And deciding to, like, move, sort of like that final moving on, because, not because he has to, but because he now has the choice to move on from his old family. And I think that would have been a better ending for that, but again, it's kind of an ending that only works if you have a better connection with those characters going in. And the game kind of doesn't really have that, so I don't know. I mean, in the very least, you get a large dance party with everybody at the end, so you do kind of at least get some of that. But yeah, that's all the games that we played. We are still technically playing Horizon Adventures, so I mean, we're pretty much at the end here. We just have the star to clean off. I'll just say, I'm enjoying the game. Keep watching that, and I'm sure I'll have more thoughts on it at the end, because I feel kind of weird reviewing it when I'm only like maybe a halfway through at this point, so more thoughts when I've actually finished that game. But yes, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel, liking all the videos, all the comments. I read all the comments. They all brighten my day to see people just engaging with this silly thing that I had created just because it was something that I wanted to be doing, and never particularly bothered myself too much with building an audience and all that, and to sort of have one growing anyway is kind of amazing to me. Even if it isn't like a huge one. I don't want to say it's small because, I mean, having any amount of subscribers is fantastic. I mean, I do sometimes occasionally look at other Let's Play channels and they'll have like way more subscribers than me, and it's like, ah darn, I'm not doing as well as them. But I don't let that bother me, but also I do look at some of their videos on their channels and they don't have nearly as many views as I have on my channel, with way less subscribers, so I don't know. I feel like I may have less fans, but I have better ones. Haha. There you go. You can write that in your comment section. That's me commenting on you, the viewer. Because I don't have any other way of doing that. Yelp review, 5 stars. Specifically, this very big one. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Oh, we have to do one more thing before we finish the level. Or after we finish the level. Job complete. And that's getting to watch a time-lapse of me washing the entire level. Look at how dirty it was when we started. That's another just satisfying thing about this game, is looking at how gross and yucky these levels are. And just how bright and colorful they are by the time you reach the end. It's the bright and colorfulness that's so great about this. Anyway, again, thank you so much for watching. More Let's Plays coming in the new year, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do want to try out some new stuff for the new year as well. We'll see if I get around to it. But thank you one last time, and Horizon is coming out tomorrow if you just want to watch that. So until then, I hope you have a good end of 2024 and a fantastic 2025. Goodbye.